What games do you want to play next year? What games have you been playing all along? Are the games that you've been playing all along this year that we just had, right? Were they aligned to the bigger games that you want to go ahead and play eventually? And if they weren't, then what are you doing, right? So that is something that I personally had to ask myself is the actions that I'm taking in the daily, are they exactly contributing to the bigger goals or the bigger games that I want to go ahead and play? And like I said, if they're not, if I observe them from afar and if they're not exactly aligned to the goals or the games that I'm trying to go ahead and play right now, then obviously you must remove them. Maybe it doesn't make any sense to do that right now. Maybe eventually it'll make a lot more sense to go ahead and do, but maybe right now in the moment it just doesn't make that much sense, right? And that is something that I feel like a lot of people really need to analyze for themselves as well, is maybe you're doing something right now that just doesn't make any sense to do right now. Maybe it's something that you even like doing, but maybe it's not. It's just not the time for you to go ahead and do it. Maybe there's a better time in the future to go ahead and do that, right? Come on, man. Come on, man. She's talking that shit, man. Ain't no way, man. Ain't no way. But essentially what I want to go ahead and do with the rest of this podcast, along with asking questions and, responding to the comments and everything, I want to go ahead and give you a very, very vague, very vague thing so you can go ahead and analyze. So I'll go ahead and explain to you the games that I'm playing. And maybe by me explaining the games that I choose to go ahead and play, maybe you will figure out the games that you want to go ahead and play for yourself, right? So for example, right, one of the aspects of this would be, let's just say the game of health, right, or the game of longevity. Like I said, I kind of already broke that one down, but essentially, what it would look like in the present moment, in the daily, right? Yeah, in the daily, essentially. What would it look like in the daily, right? It would look like me maybe being very, very intentional with my sleep, right? Maybe getting in enough hours. That's the way you would first start your day, is obviously by sleep, right? So making sure you have enough sleep. When it comes to longevity, when it comes to health, that would be one way when you go ahead and do it, right? Or let's just say it would be eating a certain meal or eating certain types of food that are going to be healthier than, let's just say, fast food, right? That would be a decision that I make or something that I eliminate that would be contributing to the bigger game. You see what I'm saying? And then maybe later on within that day, I would work out, right? Those are going to be all things that would still contribute to that same overall goal or that same overall bigger game of, let's just say, health and longevity, right? So you can kind of break that down for every single aspect of your life. And of course, there's going to be a few categories that I would recommend for you to go ahead and plan, right? And maybe they don't exactly align with what I'm doing, but nonetheless, maybe you can have equivalent to your life. So I'll give you some of mine, man. So the biggest game that I think, if I've analyzed it correctly, the biggest game I think you can play is to fulfill your life's purpose. I think that's the biggest game you can play. And every decision that you make outside of that should be contributing to that overall end goal, right? And maybe it's something bigger than that for you, right? But for me personally, as far as I could think, that is going to be the biggest game that I possibly can play. And the biggest game that I think is worth playing, right? Which is why I take the actions that I take every single day, right? So like I said, the biggest game for me is to fulfill my purpose, right? And I said this time and time again on this podcast, but I'll go ahead and say it again. My purpose is to inspire, empower, and educate the ones around me and of my influence, right? And by doing that, I must figure out a vehicle that would allow me to go ahead and do that, right? So like I said, maybe the biggest game for you is your purpose, right? What is the vehicle that is going to help you fulfill, or what are the vehicles that are going to help you fulfill your purpose, your life, your greater life's purpose? What are going to be the vehicles? So I'll give you an example. One of the vehicles for me is going to be doing this podcast. Creating a personal brand is part of my vehicle of fulfilling my purpose, right? Along with that would be maybe taking care of my girlfriend, or taking care of my family, or uh, yeah, I was essentially you kind of understand where I'm kind of going with that, but nonetheless, the biggest game is to fulfill your purpose, right? So every action that you take should be, I'm speaking for myself, should be aligned with that, of course, right? Um, Give me 1 second. Obviously, my purpose is going to extend a lot more. My life's purpose is going to extend a lot more than the purpose I tell you right now and then. But I just wanted to give you something to go ahead, for you to go ahead and take, right? But yeah. So like I said, maybe one of the games that you want to go ahead and play, This is a game that I would definitely recommend for you to go and play. Maybe the type of game that you want to play is you being successful, right? But if you want to play that game, which I would recommend every single person watching this to go ahead and play because it's a game worth playing, right? You must break that down for yourself, right? What does that look like to you? What does that success look like to you? What are the smaller games that I can play that would contribute to that bigger game, right? That's going to be the main question for today's podcast. What are the smaller games that I can play in the present moment or in the daily that will eventually lead me to the goals that I go ahead and have for myself, the bigger games that I have for myself? And everything, and here's the thing, once you begin to conceptualize and break it down for yourself, you have a lot more structure than the average person. And I feel like if you are able to refer back to this and have it all in one spot, you're going to have a complete advantage over most people. Because most people don't have it organized. They have it within their mind. They have it within their thoughts, and maybe their mind is not as cluttered as yours is. But I would say for the most part, I think it's a worthy decision for you to go ahead and write these things down for yourself, right? And you can kind of create like almost like a big tree map essentially, if you know what I'm trying to say, right? Essentially, something at the top, obviously, almost like a value hierarchy, essentially, and then you're going to have these things that branch out of that, right? And then you're gonna have more branches and things like that, of course. But you must be able to ask yourself the question of what games do you want to go ahead and play, what are the bigger games you want to go ahead and play, and then fulfill in all those missing points. Because I feel like a lot of people they want to partake in certain games, but their daily actions aren't aligned with that. So like you see what I'm saying? It doesn't make any sense for them to go ahead and to say that. So like I said, maybe you're one of those people right now. Maybe you say you want to partake in a certain game, but your actions are not aligning, right? And if they're not aligning, right? If the tree map doesn't make any sense for you, right? Then you actually have an opportunity to go ahead and take action on that, right? Instead of being the person who has no structure and no clarity within that, but yet wants this and is living in complete delusion. Does that make sense, right? You want to avoid yourself from being that person as much as you possibly can. So with that being said, write it out for yourself. What does it look like? What are the bigger games that you want to go ahead and play? What are the smaller games that you must play that are going to contribute to the bigger game that you want to go ahead and play, right? I've said that a few times now, but I want to emphasize and kind of hopefully give you some imagery of what that looks like within my mind. So when I start speaking about these things, what pops into my mind is like I said, exactly that. Like I said, branching down and like I said, seeing if there's any missing spots that are not exactly aligned, right? That's what it comes down to, right? So like I said, right, for me, the biggest game is to fulfill my purpose, right? Part of me fulfilling my purpose is to go ahead and build this podcast, of course, right? That's going to be part of my personal brand, which is going to be part of fulfilling my purpose, right? And like I had mentioned, I'll give you another one. Let's see. Let me think of another one. Let's just say I want to be a person who has a lot of status, right? And one thing you'll see with this as well is if you're able to be very, very clear and make the correct decisions within your life, you'll begin to see that a lot of the bigger games can lead you back to a certain action. For example, right? If I want a status, I want to be successful, and I want to fulfill my purpose. Right? Those are going to be all three big things that I think a lot of people would say are part of some of their bigger games that they want to go ahead and play. The one thing that would be common within all those is pursuing this podcast and doing and filming it and editing as much as I possibly can and building it until I have a lot of traction, right? That would be the almost like a keystone habit within pursuing all those goals, if you know what I'm saying. But like I said, maybe hopefully you have those for yourself, right? Maybe you have 3 or 4 big dreams big games that you want to go ahead and play, but yet there's one daily action that you can go ahead and do that's going to contribute to those eventually, right? Like I said, hopefully you have that for yourself, man. That's what I'll say. Let's see what I got. Yeah, so like this is what I have, right? So I'm gonna break it down. At least this is what happens within my head, right? Like I said, this should be if you do this, it'll be a lot of writing. It'll be a lot of writing for sure. So right, obviously I have a bigger game um of wanting to fulfill my purpose. With below that is is that I want to be influential and, fulfill my definition of success. In order to be that, I have to build the personal brand, of course, right? Obviously being authentic, of course, and obviously, learning about self-mastery and more importantly about sacrifice and self-discipline. But in order for me to do that, right? The smaller game of that would be essentially, right, is being the man who can curb temptation, who's ready to sacrifice and who will do it daily, right? That is the person that you should strive for to be every single day, right? That you are and strive to be every single day, right? And you can kind of see, at least this is the way that I see it. And one thing you'll analyze as well is some of the smaller games, some of the how do I want to describe this, man? Some of the smaller games are essentially some of the bigger games, if that makes any sense, right? It'll all lead you back. It should all lead you back, and it should all make sense if you do it correctly. If you get rid of the missing links, and if you're able to ask yourself and clarify the games that you want to go and play, you should be in a good position.